afternoon's proceedings. We've ensured that all safety protocols have been adhered to in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. The hall has been sanitized before its use today. The hall can accommodate 416 persons, but only 120 have been invited to ensure that safety is adhered to at all times. So we ask that persons who are entering and leaving the hall, please ensure that your hands are sanitized and there is to be no congregation in the main areas. Thank you very much. At this time, we invite the audiovisual persons to play the safety briefing.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, CLR James Auditorium. It is important that you listen to this safety briefing. Please note that there are no planned emergency drills today. So in the event of an emergency, you would hear an alarm. Once the alarm is heard, please proceed to the open savannah using the nearest exit to you. Walk briskly. The exits are located to the rear of the auditorium and left of the stage. The checks will be made by the relevant authorities, and only when it is safe to do so, you may enter the building again. Washrooms are located when you exit the auditorium in the foyer and at the right. Be reminded that this is a no-smoking facility. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, additional protocols have been placed for your safety. Wash sinks and hand sanitizers are located to the eastern and southern sides of the building. Additionally, during your stay at the college, please practice social distancing of 6 feet apart and ensure that your mask is worn at all times. Wash your hands as often as you can, and remember to avoid touching surfaces. It is important to stay safe and healthy. If you begin feeling unwell during your stay, please inform one of our ushers. Remember that personal responsibility must be taken to reduce the risk of contact with COVID-19 virus. Have a great day and do enjoy your stay at the college. Thank you.
If we can all kindly stand for the national anthem of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Please be seated. The Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Ivo Archie, Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We acknowledge in his absence and while he gets here, the Honorable Mr. Stuart Young, Minister of National Security and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister and a Member of Parliament. The Honorable Penelope Beckles, Minister of Housing and Urban Development. The Honorable Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court of Judicature. Senator the Honorable Hazel Thompson-Nye, Member of Parliament, Senator. The Honorable Deborah Thomas-Felix, President of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago and author of this important text being launched this evening. His Honor, Mr. Anthony Gafoor, Chairman of the Tax Appeal Board. His Honor, Mr. Sunil Sukraj, Chairman of the Environmental Commission. Ms. Natalie Willis, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labor. Judges of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago. Other representatives of the Trinidad-Tobago Legal Fraternity. Alderman Anthony Roberts, Chairman of the San Juan Laventille Regional Corporation. Members of the Board of Directors of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. Dr. Andre Vincent Henry, Director of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. Heads of trade unions, representatives, heads of employers' organizations, other representatives, specially invited guests, members of the media, and those of you who are looking at the stream online. Good afternoon and welcome to the launch of this seminal publication, Labor Law in the Commonwealth Caribbean, the Practice of Good Industrial Relations in the 21st Century. I'm extremely honored to be able to partake in this event this evening. And I'm going to give you a little story. I know Her Honor is going to be very upset with me for telling you this tale. But many of you, I'm sure, will have had close interactions with Her Honor, Deborah Thomas-Felix, over many years. And she has an ability to weave you into her life, into her web of wonder and magic. So during our many conversations last year, and of course we all know last year was quite a challenging year, she and I had conversations. I said, and I'm going to use a very informal term, Deborah, yes, we're on first name basis. When you're writing the book, I have no time for that. But then she also said that I'm not the only person who kept encouraging her, because of her vast experience and expertise, to do some kind of publication. So I got a call from Evie, and I know many of you know Evie Lawrence. And as I answer the phone, whenever I see Evie calling, I just say yes, when, what time, and what is the dress code, because it's Debroah Thomas Felix, Her Honor. So I got this call, and I said yes, what time, where? She said, no, well, Her Honor will call you. A few hours after I got a call, I saw Debroah Thomas-Felix come from my phone. And she said, the book is finished. I said, how do you mean the book finished? She said, the book is finished. I said, but it's just last year you said that you were starting this book. And this is not to minimize in any way the quality of this work, the content of this work. It just exemplifies how prolific she is as a writer, her expertise and her diligence and focus when she starts to focus on a task ahead. And so we're here today. I think this deserves a round of applause. Labor law in the Commonwealth Caribbean, the practice of good industrial relations in the 21st century. Timely, and of course, very welcomed. So before I keep going on, because we're going to have quite a bit of important speakers, I'd like to welcome to the podium to deliver the official welcoming remarks the Director of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. Please welcome Dr. Andre Vincent Henry.
Thank you, Senator Richards. The Honorable, the Chief Justice, Mr. Ivor Archie, Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The Honorable Mrs. Penelope Beckles, Minister of Housing and Urban Development. The Honorable Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court. Senator the Honorable Hazel Thompson-Ahi, Member of Parliament. The Honorable Deborah Thomas-Felix, President of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago. His Honor, Mr. Anthony Gafoor, Chairman of the Tax Appeal Board. His Honor, Mr. Sunil Sukraj, Chairman of the Environmental Commission. Mrs. Natalie Willis, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Labor, judges of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago, other representatives of the legal fraternity, Alderman Anthony Roberts, Chairman of the San Juan Laventille Regional Corporation, members of the Board of Governors of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, heads of trade union organizations, heads of labor organizations, other representatives, ladies and gentlemen, good evening all. It is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you to the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies and to the CLR James Auditorium. The distinguished president of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago has paid our college a high honor by launching this work here. It was an explicit choice, ma'am, and we thank you most sincerely for the favor. The changes in the world of work are rapid and risk-filled. At the highest level, it is difficult sometimes to identify and demarcate a local labor market. The cumulative impact of the processes inherent in globalization are driving us more and more into a global labor market with the onset of the fourth industrial revolution and the implications of digitalization. As these become more evident, we can expect the world of work to become an even more complex and complicated operating environment. Changing production patterns, flexible market manufacturing, globalized manufacturing, new forms of enterprises, new forms of work organization, increasing liberalization of markets, the freer flow of capital, rapid changes in customer preferences, concerns for social issues, concerns for sustainable development, marginalization of workers, shifting power structures. These are only some of the markers of this challenging period. At the national level, the role of policy, law, and institutions and their intersection in the world of work are critical factors that will help determine fairness and justice, not only in the workplace, but in the society at large. It is in this context that my colleagues and I welcome this publication by the distinguished president of the Industrial Court. We have been struck by that in the operation of a court, President Thomas-Felix, sometimes in the face of criticism, has hewed closely to the social justice principles that we believe to be at the core of good industrial relations and social peace. As we observe the changes taking place in the operating environment, and as we here at the college seek to fulfill our own mandate as a teaching institution, as we seek to contribute to social justice, we welcome this work. We congratulate the author who made time to put together this well-considered contribution, not just to the development of Trinidad and Tobago industrial relations, but certainly to the wider Caribbean and beyond. Madam Judge, thank you, and I make bold to charge you that this will not be your final scholarly work. God bless you.
Let's show appreciation once again for the director of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, Dr. Andre Vincent Henry. As you see, we are sanitizing between every speaker. This is the world in which we now live, so we have to take the necessary precautions. During this evening's presentations, we'll have interlaced in our actual presentations, our live presentations, several tributes, as we have indicated earlier on. Whilst the hall can hold 416 persons, we were only able to accommodate 120 with a view to maintaining social distancing and protecting and preserving life. So several of the persons who could not be here would have created video clips and presentations. We will share two of those with you right now.
One of the many good things about this piece of work is that it comes at a time when there is an absence of informed industrial relations debate and critical thinking, together with the sometimes spurious criticisms of the long-established principles of good industrial relations practices. It is also opportune because the social effect of the COVID-19 pandemic is challenging the jurisprudence and the principles of good industrial relations practices relevant to layoffs and retrenchment. I would hope, therefore, that Debbie's work provoke the kind of critical thinking and discussion that will not only preserve these valued, hard-won principles, but also facilitate changes that accommodate equity, peace, and justice. So read, enjoy, and share. And congratulations, Madam President, on a job well done.
To talk to you today about Her Honor, Mrs. Deborah Thomas-Felix. Mrs. Thomas-Felix has just authored and released an insightful book entitled Labor Law and Commonwealth Caribbean, The Practice of Good Industrial Relations in the 21st Century. She's a stalwart in the legal fraternity, achieving many firsts as a woman, shattering the so-called glass ceiling. Many individuals, especially those outside of judicial circles, will not be aware of the many accolades she has earned over the years. To name just a few, she was the youngest person ever to be elevated to the magistracy, the first family court president for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the first female deputy chief magistrate for Trinidad and Tobago. She went on to chair the Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission, the first woman to do so. Mrs. Thomas-Felix was the only Caribbean national to sit and be elected as the president of the United Nations Appeal Tribunal and the only Trinidadian to sit on the International Labour Organization's Geneva Committee. Her went on to become the first sitting female president of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago. It is quite obvious that Mrs. Thomas-Felix is aptly qualified to author this book. There is a noticeable lack of literature with regards to labour law and industrial relations, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but the wider Caribbean. This publication serves as an in-depth and comprehensive educational manual, which references over 170 cases across the English-speaking Caribbean and the United Kingdom. Most notably, it delineates important industrial relations terms such as retrenchments, dismissals, and layoffs, which often used interchangeably are clearly distinguished here. Business owners and managers can vicariously experience the plethora of grievances employees may encounter. It is through these case studies that they can better understand how to deal with these occurrences and avoid costly litigation. This generation has witnessed the birth of the Industrial Relations Act and the formation of the Industrial Court, a vital division within the judiciary. Mrs. Thomas-Felix expounds good industrial relations practices, which embolden managers to determine the fair and equitable treatment to be meted out to every class of worker, since employee appreciation is a crucial component to business success. The contents of Her Honor's book serves as an essential educational tool to the business owner, general manager, human resources manager, or anyone in a supervisory position. With specific reference to the MSME sector, one must remember that most times these businesses are not stratified. There is no department dedicated to human resource. There is no legal department, nor are funds readily available for costly retainer fees. With these factors in mind, this book will certainly serve as an encyclopedia to business owners and entrepreneurs to ensure the just treatment of employees. Moreover, this launch could not have come at a more opportune time, with so many businesses within the MSME sector facing permanent closure and staff being sent home. business owners can certainly make reference to this guidebook and ultimately avoid costly litigation. Undoubtedly, labor law in the Commonwealth Caribbean is a must-read for business owners and entrepreneurs alike. The excuse of ignorance of the law ceases to exist. The knowledge exists, all in one place. I'm proud to call Mrs. Deborah Thomas Felix my dear friend.
To describe Her Honor Deborah Thomas Felix, and now we add to that author to continue paying tribute and showing our true sentiments on this momentous occasion. Please welcome to address this esteemed hall the Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good evening. For the third time, I beg leave to acknowledge the Honorable Ms. Penelope Beckles, the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, the Honorable Justice Adrian Saunders, esteemed President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court of Judicature, of course, my dear friend, Honorable Debroah Thomas Felix, the President of the Industrial Court, and our host and esteemed author this evening, His Honor, Mr. Anthony Gafoor, Chairman of the Tax Appeal Board, His Honor, Mr. Sunil Sukraj, Chairman of the Environmental Commission. I think I saw Mr. Maurice Sweet, Permanent Secretary, Office of the Prime Minister, and Mrs. Sweet, other judges of the Industrial Court, other representatives of the Trinidad and Tobago Legal Fraternity and Labor Fraternity and Industrial Relations practitioners, members of the media, and our virtual audience. Welcome and good evening to you all. I think that's probably about half as long as my remarks. And there are remarks. I see I'm on the program as delivering a speech, but of course I am not the featured speaker, but I do beg your leave to say a few words about why I feel this work should be considered not only important and groundbreaking, but an essential addition to every library. I suspect I was invited to inject a personal note, but I do want to just speak about the book a little bit. I suspect Justice Saunders will expand on it. But I was really excited when Deborah, and I think I have leave to call her Deborah, told me she was going to write a book. I was amazed when a couple of weeks later she called me and said, I'm finished. But that just tells you, for those of you who know Deborah, it's very indicative of the kind of person and the kind of mind that she has and continues to devote to her work. So as a jurist with minor academic pretensions, I'm really, really honored this afternoon to be asked to speak at the launch of this book, which finally has begun to address a lacuna in the written repository of learning and knowledge in this area. And I'm especially proud that this accomplishment is one of my friend and batchmate, Her Honor Deborah Thomas-Felix, President of the Industrial Court. Those of you in the labor movement or who are IR practitioners will be acutely aware of the critical role that industrial relations plays in the stability of every society. It is therefore important for all stakeholders to have at least a working knowledge of the principles, practices, and jurisprudence in that area. Now, I know the book is focused on the 21st century, but I think it's important to understand it in its historical context. Most of us will know that the forerunner to the Industrial Relations Act, the Industrial Stabilization Act, was passed at a critical time of our history as a newly independent nation, when strikes and social unrest were threatening to abort the emergence of our newly independent democracy. And the critical role that the newly established tribunal had was to bring stability to the national landscape. And it was important, and the importance of the court was actually acknowledged when formally, in 1972, it was made a court of record. And it was acknowledged from its outset to be important because the first presidents were judges of the Supreme Court who were specially assigned. So it was always regarded as an important part of our national landscape. But what's different about the court, of course, as you know, was its composition, having regard to the need for specialist expertise because of its specific mandate. And in a way, it became the template for other specialist courts in Trinidad and Tobago, and the validity of it was acknowledged by the Privy Council, because there was a notion that only persons who enjoy the same status and protections of Supreme Court judges could form valid Supreme Courts of record. So we have a court that's specialized with a critical function in the society. And so the head of that court has to be somebody really special. And happily, we have a president who is both a jurist with extensive experience, but also an internationally recognized expert in the area of labor law. Today, we see one proof of that serendipity. This book is a first from a woman of many firsts. I was going to tell you all about the things she was first in, but of course, one of the hazards of speaking in the middle of the batting order is that previous speakers steal your thunder. But we know about Deborah. If you'll permit me a little bit more of history. From a deeper historical perspective, our journey towards independence and self-governance was really kick-started in the 1930s, when after the Butler riots and other protests that convulsed the British colonies in the region, the UK commissioned the Moyne Report that recommended sweeping changes which led incrementally to universal suffrage, more executive autonomy, and a more representative legislature. After World War II, the political parties actually coalesced around the leadership of the labor movement. And it's important that we understand these historical truths to understand the context and the real importance of what is happening today. And it's because of this that we have a constitution that emerged in 1962 with a preamble that said the following about the people of Trinidad and Tobago, respecting the principles of social justice. Dr. Henry talked about that. And therefore believe that the operation of the economic system should result in the material resources of the community being so distributed as to subserve the common good, that there should be adequate means of livelihood for all, that labor should not be exploited or forced by economic necessity to operate in inhumane conditions, but that there should be opportunity for advancement on the basis of recognition of merit, ability, and integrity. Those who criticize and attack the industrial court would do well to read our Constitution. And because it is there in the Constitution, that is the interpretative lens through which the Constitution, and indeed all our other laws, must be viewed. And so it is left to courts in their particular arena, and in this case the industrial court, to give flesh to the bones of our fundamental rights. What is due process? What is the protection of the law? Add to this, brew, the ILO conventions, 111, 158, that talk about prohibited grounds of discrimination, the right to be heard, and the mandate on the industrial court to ensure fairness, equity, and good conscience. What I'm trying to say is that there is a convergence between labor law and constitutional and judicial review jurisprudence. The latter two are as much informed by the first as the other way around. The previous speaker who brought greetings lamented the lack of academic writing, particularly from those of us who are jurists. Because you see, the easy excuse is that we don't have time. But maybe we should be thinking that we must find the time if we are to bring our society and our courts to the place that the Constitution envisaged. We don't write enough. We have a notable exception in our midst in the person of Honorable President of the CCJ. But Debbie, I wanted to know that this, because I know we've been talking about this for a long time. Now that you've thrown down the challenge, you've really set me thinking. So watch out. But really, as someone with more than a passing interest in this whole area, I'm really excited to see this book. Because nobody has been writing about labor law and industrial relations. And who better to do it than Her Honor, Deborah Thomas-Felix. It is, as was said earlier, a book of more than merely academic interest. I got my copy on Tuesday, and I haven't put it down. The chapter and topic layout makes it not just an invaluable resource for practitioners and members of the court, but an easy read for employers, HR practitioners, or indeed anybody who has a casual interest in labor law and industrial relations. What Her Honor has managed to do is to distill all the core principles and learning in one place. It is indeed a remarkable work, and as I said, even more so because it was produced by someone who does not have a great deal of time on her hands to ponder and write. So Debbie, I congratulate you on your lucid and comprehensive exposition of the law. And to all of you who are listening, I commend this book to you, which I shall call Volume 1. And I pray that you will keep a copy, acquire a copy, and keep it for your library. And don't just leave it in your library. Carry it in your briefcase. Thank you all for your attention.
Let's show appreciation once again to the Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, for his kind words and tribute to his friend and colleague, Honorable Debroah Thomas Felix. We would like to share with you at this time another one of those tributes that has been pre-recorded. We cue that to you right now.
Lots of books claim to provide strategies and solutions to human capital issues and challenges. This book is written by one of our most outstanding practitioners in this jurisdiction. It is a book that provides both practitioners and also laypersons a very practical approach to treating with issues and challenges as it relates to the industrial relations landscape and all other industrial relations and social challenges that one would experience. One of the key characteristics that has always connected with me as it relates to Debroah Thomas Felix is her level of determination, her level of commitment, the discipline that she has displayed throughout her career. Deborah is such an outstanding practitioner that it reminds me of the quote that you do not step into success, you grow into success. Deborah has demonstrated tangible evidence of truly growing into success. It is said that success and failure, they live in the same house. And in order for you to be truly successful, it has its roots and foundation in failure. And again, it's her level of resilience, her commitment to life. That is what is Debroah Thomas Felix. Another very key characteristic that Deborah has been able to display. Deborah has been able, through her, not just resilience, but her operating in a world, in an environment dominated by the male species, she was able to demonstrate the strengths and the security in who she is as an individual. She brought to the table that confidence. So she was able to, I don't want to use the word rival because it's not about competition. It's about each individual being given an opportunity to grow, learn, and develop, which Deborah was able to demonstrate. And so Deborah stands tall amongst her peers in this fraternity, and I dare say she has been able to excel, notwithstanding the challenges that she would have faced along the way. This book, therefore, which I highly recommend, it's a highly specialized text. And quite naturally, a lot of this would have come out of practical experiences sitting on the bench, both in the civil court and in the magistracy, and also as the president of the industrial court. As we all are aware, there's a difference between the jurisprudence as it relates to dealing, meeting, and treating with civil matters versus that of industrial relation matters, which by and large would have come out of custom and practice. And Deborah has been able to put her ideas, her experiences, those rich experiences, practical experiences into this text. And this is a text that every single practitioner, every lay person who is interested in the field of industrial relations, the principles and the practices, and to do it right. This is a text that it's a must-have for your library.
Good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to address you on this evening. It is really my great pleasure to be able to share with you on such an occasion where not only the Commonwealth Caribbean, but the world, I shall say, is going to be benefited by the work done by one of our esteemed colleagues at the Committee of Experts of the International Labour Organization. Mrs. Deborah Thomas Felix, my friend, my colleague, my esteemed and very admired colleague with whom we share valuable time doing some work for the world I consider of extreme value. More today, because interestingly, we are talking and working in one of the most sensitive moments of the history of the world human race, and not only peoples in general, but particularly for the workers of the world. We have had the opportunity to embrace Deborah when she arrived at the ILO, to share with her the nature of work that we do, but more than that, to be enriched with her knowledge, her experience, and something that when we talk about international bodies like the ILO, something that is particularly valued. And this is her perspective, her views of how to address issues that involves the world of work. Because the Committee of Experts of the ILO is precisely that. It's a body composed by 20 members from all over the world who bring their perspectives and views and their knowledge as well as experience to share amongst us in order to address the issues that are presented for our considerations. And these issues have to do with the compliance with international labor covenants, international labor law, the conventions and recommendations that has been ratified by member states of the International Labor Organization. So that particular contribution that Deborah brings into this group is unique. And this is the reason why I found it was my privilege and a deep honor to be sharing with you my appreciation towards the author of this very valuable book that is a contribution in a very timely moment for the world of work. We usually, in a book presentation or a book launching, we talk about the book. We address the issues that are cleared in the book. I want to talk about the author. I want to talk about the lady who steps in with her Caribbean feeling and Caribbean accent to share with us her Caribbean perspective and her world vision of what we can do to make it better. How can we contribute to help member states see and understand the correct way in which international conventions, labor conventions, and recommendations that they have ratified should be complied with within their states? It is important for me to highlight that there is a petty group of three members of the Committee of Experts. And interestingly, we're three ladies, all females, who has the responsibility to examine reports submitted by country states related to maritime conventions. Now, for those who are related to the labor, the world of work, you know that the first, or maybe the most outstanding and ancient conventions were signed and ratified by member states are related to trade, maritime trade. So it so happens that the conventions that we address and work on are those related to the world of seafarers, the maritime industry, merchant, etc. And today, we all know, precisely in the midst of the pandemic that is hitting the world in a devastating manner, precisely the world of work at sea is one of the sectors that is most exposed, the one of the sectors that has been challenged with lots of circumstances that violate even the basic human rights and conditions of affairs. In a time where maritime transportation is of essence to save lives. So, perspective of these three ladies, of which Deborah Thomas is one of the most important contributors, help to highlight those essential aspects that cannot be surrendered under the present circumstances. So, bringing up the international labor standards, highlighting international labor law, and sharing with not only the Committee of Experts, but in this occasion, with the entire world of jurists, lawyers, academics, industrial, corporations, and lay people, her views and knowledge with regards to labor law could not have been more timely. I really commend my colleague and friend, Judge Deborah Thomas-Felix, for the wonderful work she has done in the years that we've been working together. I have to say that she is really special, And I considered myself to be privileged to have had the opportunity not only to meet her, but to learn from her. Thank you very much, Debbie, for that you do at the Committee of Experts. And thank you extraordinarily very much for that valuable contribution you're doing by launching today that piece of work that you have done to share with the rest of the world your views, knowledge, and understanding of international labor law. This, I think, is a moment that we should be very proud of, and all of us that are involved in one way or the other in the activities related to law, and I say it like this to make it very ample, to include all those, not only lawyers, but all who are in one way or the other involved and connected to the making of law, the application of law, the enforcement of law, and having to abide by the law. We are all grateful for this contribution you have done and sharing with us today. Thank you very much.
Graciela, that was Graciela Dixon Caton, all the way live from Panama. She is the chair of the ILO Committee of Experts on Applications and Recommendations, of course, paying her salutations and paying her homage to her friend and colleague, Her Honor Deborah Thomas-Felix. Well, under normal circumstances, we'd probably be in Panama right now. We'd probably be in an all-inclusive, but of course COVID-19 and the pandemic has curtailed all of that, so it would be remiss of us this evening to invite you here and not regale you with some sort of entertainment. And I hope they're playing Backyard Jam. But you're not allowed to get out of your seats, and you're not allowed to intermingle. Please put your hands together and welcome to the stage the Xavier Strings. I think given the fact that you're not having any carnival, you could do better than that. This is basically what your Carnival 2021 is. As we continue our tributes, just before we head to our feature address this evening, we'd like you to direct your attention once again to the screen for another tribute by His Honor, Mr. Aberdeen.
I am happy today to join with the rest of the industrial relations community in marking and celebrating yet another important milestone being achieved by Her Honor, Mrs. Deborah Thomas-Felix. As you know, Ms. Thomas-Felix has been the president of the Industrial Court. Even before that, was a magistrate, senior magistrate, deputy chief magistrate. Subsequent to becoming the president of the Industrial Court, she distinguished herself again, becoming a Fulbright scholar. She was a member of the governing body of the International Labour Organization, and as such a member of the Committee of Experts. She became a member of the United Nations Appeal Tribunal, and in that regard, she also operated as president of that tribunal for a time. Currently, she's a member of the International Monetary Fund Administrative Tribunal. I don't know exactly where she got this warrior spirit from, this determination to oppose what is wrong and to insist on fighting for what is right. This fearlessness, I'm not certain where that came from historically, but I know that everywhere she has gone, the institutions in which she found herself working, those institutions have benefited greatly from her steadfastness and from her fearlessness as a judge, as an advocate, as a practitioner of industrial relations. I have been privileged to work with her, and I've always found that working alongside her has allowed me myself to grow and to develop, and perhaps to renew my own vigor in the area of the struggle for justice. I have been at it for 50 years, and so I may be among those who have failed to put down in writing the important academic lessons drawn from the persistent struggle in the field of industrial relations to develop principles of good industrial relations practice. But she has stepped forward, as she usually does, being a woman of action, being a person who has an amazing capacity to deal with a number of issues at the same time. I always marvel at that. Mrs. Deborah Thomas-Felix has had a very distinguished career and has developed a wide experience in the field of labor law and industrial relations. Not only has she distinguished herself in very many fields as a leader, but as one of the few female leaders in most of the areas that she has become involved in. Established the family court in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and she became its president. So that would have been a first. She, I believe, was the first female to hold the position of deputy chief magistrate in the country. She certainly was the first female to hold the post of president of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago. I think when she went to the United Nations Appeal Tribunal, she might have been, that might have been a first in terms of a person from the Caribbean, and a woman at that. She has now added to that illustrious list of achievements the accolade of being an author. I'm happy to call her my friend. I believe that the publication of her book entitled Labor Law in the Commonwealth Caribbean is a very important occurrence in the history of the country. At this particular time, it comes at a particularly important time when there are a great deal of stresses and strains being put on the industrial relations system. The tendency to want to avoid and disregard important principles of good industrial relations practice. And in this regard, I think that the book is especially important because it does not just deal with labor law per se, but it signifies, it signals, it underlines the question of the practice of good industrial relations. And that, I think, makes it more significant than the other publications which have been offered as academic work in this area. I am confident that this book, this publication, as an important academic work, will add greatly to the establishment of clarity, the improvement of the knowledge base of those who practice industrial relations, whether as from the standpoint of being employers or trade unionists or industrial relations consultants or students of industrial relations and labor law generally. I am excited by the prospect and I look forward quite eagerly to the impact of this academic work in our national sphere in the field of industrial relations. It is likely to be a work that will be referred to and regarded as an important go-to piece of research work for the enlightenment and guidance of us all. Thank you.
More category of persons who I know will certainly benefit from this publication: legislators. Our next address will be our feature address today, and we are extremely honored to have the Honorable Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, to deliver our feature address. Let's welcome him to the podium with a round of applause, please.
Honorable Chief Justice, Honorable Penelope Beckles, my distinguished colleague judicial officers, including, of course, our distinguished author, Debroah Thomas Felix, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to warmly congratulate President Debroah Thomas Felix on the publication of this most informative text. I am so proud of this accomplishment by my friend and colleague. Few here would know that Her Honor and I actually go back a little way. I recall vividly when in 1995, she was recruited by the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I'm a national of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I remember when she was recruited to assist in the establishment of, and ultimately to preside over, the family court I was then in private practice. I have to say, at the peak of my practice, because in a few months I left St. Vincent. But Her Honor, in a very short time, developed a reputation among the local bar as a no-nonsense, fair, and knowledgeable presiding judge. If you were representing a deadbeat father or an abuser, you didn't want to be in Judge Thomas Felix's court. I was lucky because at the time, I had a steady stream of family law clients, but I did a considerable amount of pro bono work. And some of that work was for women's organizations, so that many of the women I represented were victims of abuse. And I would have had a good time, I think, before Her Honor, but I left very shortly after she was appointed. And so I never really got to know her when she was in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I never had much interactions with her. I really got to know Her Honor in, of all places, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Together with the late Justice Wendell Kangaloo, of blessed memory, we all found ourselves attending the same Commonwealth program in Canada in, I think it was 1998. This was a 3-week train-the-trainer program. There were a little over 20 of us from Asia, from Africa, from the Pacific, and the Caribbean. And true to form, the small Caribbean contingent, especially Wendell, Deborah, and myself, we struck up a deep bond of friendship. And in a number of ways, we, both serious and mischievous, we enlivened the camaraderie among the course participants. Among other things, as Judge Oxner from Canada, who used to run the program at the time, never ceases to remind me, we contrived, as Caribbean participants, to develop a secret nickname for every one of the course participants. Now, so great was the friendship among Wendell, Deborah, and myself, and Her Honor has never really been told this. She doesn't know this. She's going to hear this for the first time. Wendell and I served for a brief period at the end of the course as her bodyguards. How? Well, the whole thing started with a story that will embarrass Her Honor, but I gave her a little forewarning just now. The nickname we gave to a certain gentleman, I think he was from Botswana, but he's from an African country, which we called him behind his back, of course, was Gorgeous. Now, why would Wendell, Deborah, and Adrian call this man Gorgeous? It is true that he was always very well turned out, tall, sturdily built. But the reason we called him Gorgeous is because Her Honor relayed to us that the first time she met this gentleman, I'm not sure whether she had said that she first met him in the elevator or the hotel lobby or at breakfast. We all stayed in the same hotel, lovely hotel at the bottom of Signal Hill. But the first time he set eyes on Mrs. Thomas Felix, he blurted out, You are gorgeous. I take you back to Africa as my wife. Well, needless to say, as the course was winding down, Wendell and I kept a sharp lookout to make sure there was no abduction going on. On a more serious note, that 3-week course in Canada, which up to last year took place every year from 1997, it was a most intensive and informative one. Over the years, it played a huge part in preparing scores of judicial officers throughout the Commonwealth for future roles in advancing judicial education in our respective judiciaries. And in fact, both Justice Kangaloo and Her Honor returned to Trinidad and Tobago and played seminal roles in establishing and promoting the Judicial Education Institute of the Trinidad and Tobago Judiciary. And indeed, this afternoon's book launch is yet again testament to the continuing role of furthering judicial education by graduates of that Commonwealth program. Her Honor, as you have heard repeatedly, is extremely well placed to author a book on labor law in the Caribbean. She's been a judge of the Industrial Court for many years, and for 9 of those years, she has been the president of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago. The esteem in which she is regarded is attested to, again, as you have heard, by the appointments she has held on the international stage in the field of industrial and labor law. She served as a judge of the United Nations Appeals Tribunal and now holds the post of president of that tribunal as well. She's rightly regarded as a global expert by the International Labour Organization and sits on a committee composed of 20 of the world's most eminent legal luminaries who are responsible for monitoring the application of international labor standards. Her Honor's ready familiarity with these standards, her general expertise on industrial law, and her involvement in the ILO at the highest levels render her eminently equipped to author a book on labor law in the Commonwealth Caribbean. Indeed, the Caribbean community, CARICOM, was pleased to call on Her Honor's skill and expertise just last year when the CARICOM Administrative Tribunal was being established. And this is a body that would receive appeals from staff members employed with CARICOM organs and institutions. I don't know how many of you appreciate how difficult it is to author a legal text that is to have application throughout the Caribbean. And of course, throughout this address, when I refer to the Caribbean, I refer to the English-speaking Caribbean, the Commonwealth Caribbean. Of course, the entire Caribbean, as you know, includes Spanish, French, Dutch, Creole-speaking peoples, but we're speaking now the Commonwealth Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean. And it is easy to assume that for that part of the Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean, since we were all colonies of Britain at one time, and that Britain bequeathed to us the common law, that if you're a legal expert in a particular field, as Judge Thomas-Felix undoubtedly is, in the field of labor law, you simply write a book on that subject area, and it can automatically be of use and application throughout the Anglophone Caribbean. The reality is that while it is true that much of the origins and the spine of the law, what we call the common law, is pretty much similar throughout the region, as you begin to explore in detail any particular area of law, you will find that there are considerable differences and nuances that exist from country to country. And if a legal text is to be truly Caribbean in scope, the author has to research and identify and grapple with these differences and explain and make sense of them. It is a major accomplishment to author a Caribbean legal text, and Her Honor richly deserves our congratulations and commendations on this accomplishment. Caribbean legal texts are of particular significance for me for a special reason. Over the past 15 years or so, I have been a devout, unabashed, incessant champion, a missionary in the promotion of what I refer to as Caribbean jurisprudence. The development of Caribbean jurisprudence is integrally linked to two seminal events. The first is the commencement of the teaching of law in the Caribbean, and the second is the establishment of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Last year, 2020, was a milestone year in each respect. The year 2020 marked 50 years since we began training lawyers in the Caribbean. The first class of UWI's law faculty began its operations in October of 1970. So we've had 50 years of producing our own lawyers, molded in the crucible of the struggles of Caribbean peoples and shaped by the passion, the wisdom, and experience of Caribbean law lecturers. Last year, simultaneously, marked 15 years since the region produced its own final court of appeal in the Caribbean Court of Justice, a court to replace a colonial relic, a court that every day seeks to live out its vision to be a model of judicial excellence. I suppose the reason why I'm so passionate about Caribbean jurisprudence is because circumstances has put me in a position to be intimately involved in the unfolding of each of these related streams of law and justice. I was in the third batch of Caribbean-trained law students, and of course, I have been with the CCJ since its inception in 2005. When we in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth batches of those of us who were trained in the Caribbean embarked on our studies, our legal studies, the books from which we studied were written by Englishmen and Englishwomen. They referenced disputes occurring for the most part in the United Kingdom. The cases were cases decided by British judges in English courts. That was certainly the case with all the texts on labor law. We fast forward in time, in my own lifetime, and we see that labor law is actually one of those areas where there has been a fair amount of Caribbean scholarship over those 50 years. And what is particularly pleasing is that some of the publications have been authored by persons who have been judges and judges on industrial courts. And this allows those authors, persons like Her Honor, to bring to bear their direct experience in the courts with the subject matter thereby making it more relevant, making it more alive to the Caribbean readership. Now, this is not the time to explore the depths of the dynamic relationship between law and society, nor is it appropriate for me here and now to elaborate on how advantageous it is to our advancement as a civilization for our legal texts to be written by Caribbean experts, or for that matter, for our final court to be heard in the Caribbean, our final appeals to be heard in the Caribbean by judges who reside in the Caribbean. I would only observe in passing, in relation to the latter, that one of the key reasons why a majority of the people of England voted to separate themselves from the European Union was the fact that they could not stomach a European court staffed by European judges making binding decisions for proud English women and men. Yes, that was one of the reasons for Brexit. Caribbean people? Well, it seems that we vote in the opposite direction. We have successively voted to continue to have a British court staffed by British judges cited in London to be our final court of appeal in preference to our own Caribbean Court of Justice. But I suppose psychologists would explain that better than I. But let us focus on this book that we are launching today and the subject matter at hand. It's very appropriate that it is being launched here in this building, named after one of the labor leaders of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. Captain Arthur Cipriani's birthday would have been tomorrow, 31st of January. And having been born in 1875, tomorrow will be 126 years since his birth. Labor can be described as the physical and mental effort and initiative of human beings. Labor is undoubtedly the most important factor in the production of goods and services. One German philosopher goes back even further, and he says that labor played the pivotal role in the transition from ape to man. As the introduction to our honors book points out, labor lies at the heart of any society's social and economic development. Moreover, again as noted by Her Honor, the act of engaging in labor is critical to the dignity, well-being, and personal development of human beings. Which is why we sometimes need to be careful about punishing children by imposing on them some chore or task. It would be awful for a society, especially a society that has had the history that ours has had, for persons to continue to associate labor with punishment. We should really be invested in the exact opposite dynamic. Labor should at all times be exalted. A society that does not protect and ennoble labor, that does not ensure the optimal conditions for labor to flourish, is a society that quotes not only a serious shortfall in productivity, but also ultimately civil unrest. For the good of both humanity and society, the law must advance good industrial relations and practices. Of course, as I alluded to just now, we in the Caribbean have experienced a brutal history in relation to the treatment of labor. As everyone here knows, this past included the kidnapping of countless Africans who were then forcibly transported to these parts to work as enslaved persons on plantations. We also had the terrible exploitation of indentured servants brought from India, Madeira, China, other places. Professor Leighton Jackson references these matters in his very seminal lecture on the history and jurisprudence of the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago, which lecture is reprinted as the first chapter of her honors book. And it is a lecture that I would commend to everyone. In fact, of course, I commend the entire book. But this lecture really set the stage for a historical appreciation of labor and for the labor scene that we currently have. Caribbean historians record the epic clashes over the centuries between the enslaved and slave master, between labor and colonial interests, between labor and capital, and between labor and the state. But a text on labor law is not necessarily aimed at chronicling these struggles. Struggles that have seen these countries move from Aboriginal resistance to colonization to a post-slavery common law that has fed the fiction that a single worker and an employer had equal bargaining power in negotiating and implementing a contract of employment. It has really been left to the militancy of working people over the centuries and Caribbean governments in the post-independence period to establish by law industrial courts and other devices aimed at promoting and securing good and fair industrial relations and practices. In the effort to secure decent conditions under which the citizenry can contribute their labor to national development, Caribbean governments have a friend and ally in the International Labour Organization. The adoption of international labor standards and best practices, as contained in ILO resolutions, is a powerful factor in the promotion of decent working conditions for all women and men. It is in large measure due to the existence and widespread awareness of these international labor standards that we in this region enjoy much of what we take for granted: regular working hours, paid holidays, maternity, even paternity benefits, severance on retrenchment, and a raft of other labor protections that are enshrined in national laws that also outlaw forced and child labor. As the Honorable Chief Justice mentioned, the Constitution of this country calls on all who live here to respect the principles of social justice and to ensure that the operation of the economic system results in the material resources of the community being so distributed as to serve the common good. The Constitution demands adequate means of livelihood for all, that labor should not be exploited or forced by economic necessity to operate in inhumane conditions, but that there should be opportunity for advancement on the basis of recognition of merit, ability, and integrity. Judge Thomas Felix's book rightly focuses broadly on the ways in which these constitutional aims are achieved. To this end, the book treats with and navigates the legal nuances involved in a variety of areas, starting with the concept of management prerogative. As Her Honor explains, the rationale for the exercise of management's prerogative lies in what is referred to as the inherent autonomy of a business enterprise to direct their operations efficiently and without undue interference. But this is a right, of course, that must be reconciled with the dictates of good industrial relations as enshrined in the law, and the equally legitimate right of labor to dignity, to job security, to fairness, and to respect. How are these potentially and often conflicting interests reconciled? As Her Honor indicates, it is the Constitution and the law that constrain and shape the exercise of management's prerogative. And indeed, the fact that we heard tributes, not just from Her Honor's peers, but also from representatives of the employer community, is a signal, is an indication of the esteem with which Her Honor and this book are held. The chapter of the book that fascinated me most was the one on fixed-term contracts, for the simple reason that the intricacies of such contracts are often overlooked or taken for granted. But as Her Honor points out, a whole lot could turn on whether a worker's contract of employment is construed as falling under a fixed term as opposed to permanent employment. Whether it is to be regarded as one or the other is not always as easy a matter to decide as you might think. And the decision, one way or another, can have serious consequences for the worker. It may, for example, implicate the worker's entitlement to certain advantages, like maternity benefits, for example. Or it could have consequences for the worker's continued employment with the particular establishment. Her Honor draws on cases and authorities from England and several decisions from the Industrial Court of Trinidad and Tobago, some of them authored by her, to authoritatively discuss the circumstances in which the failure to renew a fixed-term contract may or may not attract a successful claim of unfairness. According to Her Honor, the way the parties choose to label their relationship is not conclusive evidence of the type of relationship which existed, especially when the evidence suggests that the legal nature of the relationship differs from the labels the parties have attached to it. Her Honor cited a variety of cases that helpfully pointed to a range of factors that must be weighed in determining whether what is in effect permanent employment is dressed up to appear as though it was fixed term or temporary employment. As the book states, courts have to strike a balance between, on the one hand, protecting employers from unfounded claims of unfair or wrongful dismissal, where there are genuine fixed-term contracts, and on the other hand, protecting workers from casual dismissal, when in fact they are really permanent employees. The book covers a wide expanse of employment law. It treats with the subject matter in simple and straightforward terms, and it references a wide variety of precedents of judicial decisions from the region outside of Trinidad and beyond. Whether the topic is layoffs, dismissal, retrenchment, or reinstatement, this is a text that pulls together the important legal learning and case law in the respective area. It is a text that adds to the growing corpus of Caribbean jurisprudence. Law students now will confidently be able to cite and refer to this text as a way of understanding all of the intricacies of labor law. The book is a powerful resource, for practitioners, for judicial officers, judges, magistrates, for employers, for trade unionists and other workers' representatives, and of course for students of the law. Her Honor has assembled the most significant cases on labor law across the region. She has categorized them into critical areas. She has made a searching analysis of the principles that are pertinent to each of these categories and has applied the case law to the various principles that she has distilled. This is a book that I very highly recommend, and I am so very pleased to have been invited to be a part of this occasion to mark its ceremonial launch. I thank you very much for your attentiveness.
Let's hear it once again for the Honorable Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, who delivered our feature address paying homage to our host this evening, Her Honor, the author of the publication, Dr. Deborah Thomas Felix. At this time, we'd like to share with you one more of our, of course, testimonials, and then we have more entertainment, and then our host will, of course, bring the author's remarks. So let's direct our attention to the screens once again for one of our testimonials. In the absence of that, I think we should move along, keep things moving. Well, we told you that under normal circumstances, we'd be in a fete somewhere, so we wouldn't want to rob you of that. Actually, someone messaged me and told me we'd actually be in QRC fete. So to bring that kind of energy and vibe, let's welcome to the stage once again the Xavier Strings. Dear sisters, please. So you can't say and get your carnival. All right, let's head to the screen one more time for one of our testimonials.
She's not only an excellent friend, but she's also, I think, somebody who crosses boundaries, a mentor as well. Somebody who I think is not just a friend to me, but a friend to this country by virtue of her long service. I think, as we all know, she's been a very well-known legal jurist and very committed public servant. She's someone who possesses a keen intellect, a broadness of mind, an ability to distill facts and make them relatable and digestible to everyone across the board, which I think is come across in this novel, in this publication as well. It really speaks to her work ethic and who she is and her goals and her commitment, not just to her current incarnation as president of the Industrial Court, but to this country and to the region and the community, international community as a whole. So the book and the expedited publication and production of it is no surprise if you know her well. The publication of the book is extremely timely, topical, relevant, and overall valuable for several key reasons. First of which, of course, we are currently dealing with the repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in addressing issues such as dismissals, retrenchment, layoffs, and managerial and management prerogative, inadvertently, the publication will come to serve, I think, as a very useful guidepost to industrial relations practitioners as we navigate these very, what I would call, certainly unprecedented waters of COVID-19 and its aftermath. And so in providing guidance to industrial relations practitioners as to how these unprecedented waters can be charted, can be navigated safely and to the betterment of all social partners, I think the publication is extremely useful in that regard and extremely timely and very extremely topical. In drawing on cases not only from our domestic experience but the regional experience as well. The publication also highlights what I think is now a now obvious lacuna in our industrial relations jurisprudence and in the field. Because if you recall, the title is Labor Law in the Caribbean, the Commonwealth Caribbean, Achieving Good Industrial Relations, Practice and what have you. And in that respect, it highlights the importance of what anchors good governance in any country. And that is, of course, adherence to the rule of law, which is, I think, fundamental and critical to underpinning not just good industrial relations practice, but again, the wider question of good governance in the society we want to create, not just for ourselves, but for our children and our future. She serves on the Committee of Application of Standards in the ILO based in Geneva, where she's one of 20 global jurists, very eminent jurists, who consider how countries adhere to international labor standards and conventions. And I think from that perspective, it's very important to underscore how this publication also highlights the importance of international cooperation in developing our institutions of good governance. She also serves, as you're probably aware, on the United Nations Appeal Tribunal, the IMF Appeal Tribunal, IMFAT. Again, evidence of someone who is not just content to let her bucket down on her domestic terrain, but also to cast the net wider and to adopt a 360-degree approach in terms of what we can contribute as Trinidad and Tobago to our international and regional communities. This book will reflect the breadth and depth of her vast experience. It's one thing to have experience in a particular area, but it's quite another thing to have experience in a cross-section of fields. And her local experience in the judiciary over a couple of years reflects very clearly in the publication. Underpinning all of this, the evidence of her commitment to the rule of law and the importance of developing strong institutions for good governance, to support good governance. I think actually that this publication might be the first of several publications to come in the future, and I would very much hope that that would be the case, because she definitely has a lot to say and a lot to contribute.
We've bestowed many well-deserved titles on her honor all evening long, as we should. But something struck me all through the evening, and I don't know if you all picked it up also. She hasn't changed one bit. Over all the years, the face has stayed the same. I want you all to join me in welcoming to the microphone our host this evening, author, the President of the Industrial Court of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Honor, Deborah Thomas-Felix.
Have a cheering chorus. Good afternoon, everyone. I do not want to go into the salutations except to say greetings to all. And I want to recognize my colleague, Mr. Justice Norton Jack, Madam Justice Sandra Paul, Madam Justice Joy Donaldson Honeywell, because they were not acknowledged earlier on today. Special greetings to Mr. Justice Ivor Archie, Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Justice Samuel Saunders, the President of the Caribbean Court of Justice. And greetings to all. Welcome. These are unusual times, and I know many of you, and I'm speaking to the virtual audience now, would have liked to be here in person, and I wish you were here. But unfortunately, due to the current health crisis, this was not possible. My special thanks to everyone who is attending the launch today, especially those who are attending virtually. The name of my book is Labor Law in the Commonwealth Caribbean, the Practice of Good Industrial Relations in the 21st Century. One may ask, what is industrial relations? And many will agree with my answer, which is that industrial relations is the complex, dynamic interaction among business owners, managers, workers, and trade unions. Most people will understand that definition, and they will relate to it. However, if one is asked, what is the practice of good industrial relations? There's usually a pause. Some may respond and say, that is the work that you guys do at the court, and that is what you all talk about. And others may say it is a theoretical concept which has no practical bearing in the workplace. You know, I often say in court, and for those lawyers who are here will remember that employers and workers have a common purpose, which is for the business to flourish and to be successful. So business owners can realize profits, and for workers to receive decent wages, work in safe conditions, and in some instances, receive pension upon retirement. That is the common purpose which employers and workers share. Therefore, it is in the interest of all those involved in a particular business enterprise to work and to contribute towards its success. In my view, the trade-off for workers is simple. You do the best work that you can and give your best performance in the job in exchange for a fair wage, to work in a safe and decent conditions, to be treated with dignity and respect, and to have job security. So my friends, when I'm asked, what is good industrial relations? My answer is, good industrial relations is a demonstration of fairness and equity in the workplace. It requires the adherence to the principles of fairness, equity, equality of treatment, and the rules of natural justice, together with the use of international labor standards. It demands that workers work in safe conditions, that they receive decent wages, and they're treated with dignity and respect at work. The advantage which an employer derives from a good working environment is a motivated task force with high productivity and less disruption for recruitment and retention, less disruption of recruitment and retention of staff. Good industrial relations is not theoretical, but rather it is founded in law, in our legal framework, and in the practice of industrial relations. You may remember that the principles of fairness, equity, equality, and natural justice are the very principles upon which the foundation of our societies were built, and they are indeed the principles which have assisted in stabilizing our economies and our countries over time. And both Chief Justice Archie and Justice Saunders referred to that stabilizing effect. This is a time in the history of the world where there's a coronavirus pandemic called COVID-19, and we are seeking answers and searching for solutions to address this global health crisis, particularly solutions on how to adjust and to adapt in these times and after the crisis. I will quote from my book and say, and this is a quote, "There is a temptation sometimes to put international labor standards aside and treat them as not important in times of crisis. This is a time more than ever where the adherence to proper labor standards assume even greater importance to minimize instability in the future and to safeguard the interests of all in the world of work," unquote. There's no doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic and the measures which have been adopted to stem its spread have accelerated the digitalization of business processes. They have also significantly altered work organization, working conditions, and aspects of the employment relationship in many contexts. The social and economic impacts of these developments are evident, and the implication for the world of work still uncertain. What is certain is that they demand action by all of the tripartite constituents who must address the immediate, medium, and long-term consequences. In 2019, long before the current pandemic was declared, President Ramaphosa of South Africa and Prime Minister Löfven of Sweden, co-chairs of the Global Commission on the Future of Work, presented the report of the Commission, and they noted, and I quote, "The powerful forces shaping the future of work demand action that is no less transformative than that taken at the ILO's founding, which was in 1919. Governments and employers and workers' organizations need to reinvigorate the social contract to meet with the challenges we face in the future," unquote. Indeed, national labor law international labor standards, and social dialogue provide foundations for actions to be taken at this time. Since the tripartite constituents adapt them to suit changing contexts, they remain relevant for addressing economic and social transformations over time. This book is written to be used not only by experts of international relations, but by everyone. I used a style of writing which is uncomplicated and which a non-lawyer and a non-industrial relations expert can readily comprehend, because my hope is that the underpinning of the practice of good industrial relations will be understood by all. I often say that there are many owners and managers of businesses who want to do the right thing, but they do not have the knowledge and the understanding of good industrial relations and of the international labor standards to guide them. Similarly, there are some practices which by workers which show a lack of understanding of these very principles. I therefore hope that this work can add to the conversation about the practice of good industrial relations in the Caribbean and in the wider global context. My sincerest thanks to all of the speakers who have contributed virtually in the evening's proceedings. My heartfelt thanks to the President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders. I had totally forgotten that gorgeous joke. In fact, the man thought I was related to Wendy Fitzwilliams because she had won Miss Universe that very month when we were in Canada. My fondest and deepest thanks to my colleague, friend, the Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Ivor Archie, and I thank these two gentlemen for their kind sentiments and their understanding of what I was trying to put across. And I think you understood it very well. Thank you. I have acknowledged in the book a number of persons who have been of assistance and who have contributed to a large measure to make this book a reality. However, I do want to mention again the director of the Cipriani Labor College, Dr. Andre Vincent Henry, and his team for the tremendous support and assistance which they have given to make this launch possible. Dr. Henry's excitement and enthusiasm for this book will always remain with me. I told him, but you are more excited than I am. And he said, we need it. The Caribbean needs it. So thank you, Dr. Henry. Thank you, Ian, wherever you are, Ian Daniel and the rest of your team. Thank you for the support, and thank you for having us here in your space. I wish again to express I know you all are expecting me to give this great speech. It's not happening. I wish again to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for taking your time to share this moment with me. I thank you for your love and support, and I look forward to socializing with you before the evening has ended. Thank you.
I just do it like a boss. I'm betting morning.
So I think she certainly deserves a round of applause. Let me just add my own congratulations. I am so proud of you, as I'm sure we all are. So at this point, we would like to execute some presentations. We'd like the Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Ivor Ashe, please join us on the stage. And we're going to ask you to come up one by one so we can observe the safety protocols. And Her Honor, Mrs. Thomas-Felix, will present a copy of the publication to the Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Ivor Ashe. And next, thank you, Mr. Justice Ivor Ashe. The Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders, of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Thank you. Justice Saunders. I can't get used to taking pictures with these masks. And Dr. Andrew Vincent Henry, Director of the... Dr. Vincent Henry? And I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of the head of the public service, PS Maurice Sweet, who is the PS to the Prime Minister. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate your presence here. And finally, but not least, we'd like to ask Minister Penelope Beckles to join us on stage for a presentation. Thank you very much for being here, Minister Beckles. Thank you very much, Your Honor. And I think she deserves a round of applause. The book is called Labor Law in the Commonwealth Caribbean, the Practice of Good Industrial Relations in the 21st Century. This brings to a close the official part of this evening's proceedings. We'd like to advise you that please keep your seats. We'd like to help you to exit in the most safe fashion. We're trying to avoid, of course, and observe all the safety protocols, any congregation. So you'll be led out row by row, starting with, of course, the head row. And we thank you for being with us this evening. Let's give a round of applause one more time. And I think it will be available in bookstores from Monday. So go out and purchase the books. And once again, thank you for being with us this evening. We wish you safe journeys to your various destinations, and continue to observe safety protocols. Be safe. Thank you so much, everyone.
Happy place in my life every living day. Happy place in my life every living day. Happy place in my life every living day. I'm at a happy place in my life.
You can start the song.
And I just come out here to do right. So whether day or night, I will never ever change. I'm at a happy place everywhere I go. I'm at a happy place, never ever change. I'm at a happy place everywhere I go. I'm at a happy place. So when you see me rocking with my friends, it's just a love, it's just a vibes on the ends. And when you see me rocking by myself, tell them it's no false pretense, so me tell them. And when you see the liquor in me head, me live my life like it's no problem. And anybody want fight? I just do it like a